The landscapes of our lives are for learning, where experience is our teacher. When we gather together to share our resources, we are destined to love and thrive. Good morning, Pierre.
Hey, good morning, Maureen. It's raining. It's raining out here.
It's raining here too. Weirdly,
Is
maybe it's the same temperature. It's like 58 here in Boston.
I can check my watch, which will actually tell me. How crazy is that? Tell me.
Well, I mean, were you outside today?
Yeah, no, I would say actually, it's yeah, I was going to say it seems like it's exactly the same. And guess what? My watch says it's exactly the same. It's 57 degrees.
Crazy, right? Weird.
Yeah.
Anywho,
Hey, what are we talking about?
yeah, I just was talking to you about this Professor John Vervaeke. You spell his name Vervaeke, and he is.
Thank you for spelling that out. I would not have known.
It's kind of a cool name.
Yeah.
Anything with two V's in it, it's kind of badass.
With the AE happening in there. Yeah, no, that's really cool.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. So he's an award-winning lecturer at the University of Toronto in psychology, cognitive science, and Buddhist psychology. I'm just reading from this little wiki page. His academic interests include wisdom, mindfulness, meditation, relevance realization, which is really cool. I'll talk more about that. General intelligence and rationality.
Could I
go ahead.
Roll that back for a second? The beginning part of that sentence was what?
His academic interests?
That's it. His academic interests are, and then it listed like awareness, mindfulness, and thought, and
wisdom,
like
mindfulness, meditation. Yeah, relevance, realization, general intelligence, and rationality.
Yeah. So when I was going to school, I don't think there was any professor like that. And I think it's so interesting that what we're talking about in this podcast is now recognized as a discipline and field of study and awareness. Before it was like, oh, I study the brain, or there was the burgeoning field of psychology. I'm very, very old, but now we're into awareness, and that's cool. Okay, so sorry about that.
Yeah, no, he talked. So I brought him up to you today because I listened to his most recent podcast with Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson, also University of Toronto professor of psychology, and they worked together for many years and have had many conversations. That's how I found John Vervaeke, was through listening to conversations between him and Jordan Peterson in a variety of places. And like, he's been on a panel, they've done panel talks and different things, but anyways, yeah, that's how I kind of ran into him. And interesting guy. And like what you're saying about, like, you find it interesting that he's a professor and his interests are this cross-section kind of stuff. I think cognitive science is a relatively new discipline, and it covers, I think, linguistics, philosophy, psychology, and probably like hard brain science or neuroscience or whatever. I could be wrong about that, but it's four different kind of disciplines interwoven sort of thing. And he was originally like a philosopher as a younger man. I think he got his BA in philosophy and maybe a master's, and ended up in psychology in a kind of a roundabout way. And then found Tai Chi and meditation and this kind of Eastern wisdom stuff as just in his personal life, and then kind of wove it into, obviously that's his interest in wisdom, mindfulness, and so forth. So
yeah, let me just
really interesting guy.
Yeah, let me just go back to your comment on Tai Chi. it's a martial art, but it's an art form and physical discipline that is really tuned to meditation. And you go through these postures. People probably know what it is, but my dad did it over decades, and so it's
You
interesting
you'd be
that he chose, that he did that. And we talk about somatic stuff on this podcast, and then he went into meditation. That's kind of a normal thing, I would assume, in some ways.
Yeah. Well, he talks a lot about embodiment. And he's got like his tentacles are in a lot of different areas. I've seen him I've seen him appear in courses with like Gabor Mate and like anyway, if you're interested, listeners, you can look up John Vervaeke and follow, the different things he's done. He basically, I think he was telling Jordan Peterson in this podcast that he taught this series on YouTube, this 50 video series. It's basically a course, and it's called Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. And
Right.
it's basically a compilation of his lectures that he gave at the University of Toronto, which he's been awarded all kinds of awards. Students loved him. His courses were out of sight. And so I think somebody came to him and said, hey, we should record these and put them online. And I think somebody right now with him is also coming out with the book Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, which it's the transcripts from his videos, but also edited, because obviously when you're speaking and then you put it into a book form, it changes. But that's, I guess, in the works. He also wrote a book called Zombies.
Let me just dial into the meaning crisis. I guess, he propounds this idea that culture has a worldview that kind of gives us meaning, and it's kind of like an operating system. Culture is sort of like an operating system to deal with the world reality. And I guess he argues that our worldview right now is in flux and kind of damaged, that we've kind of left some wisdom behind, and taken up new models, like science can, figure out everything, and we can just believe what we want to believe. There's just subjective reality rather than, some historic wisdom in places like philosophy and religion and stuff like that. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, it's hard to put him in a nutshell. It's really hard. Like, I appreciate what you just said, but like, you have to watch the videos. I mean, it's just layers and layers. I mean, he goes through Western philosophy, and it's a lot. It's complicated, and he doesn't. I don't think it's anything you can kind of just say, oh, he's like, talk about this. It's so complex.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate what you're saying, Maureen, because we started this podcast for this very reason. There's 50 lectures out there on YouTube, from a guy who's got a very advanced and novel view of how things are operating. And that's what we're doing. This material is everywhere, and I don't want to put them in a nutshell. It's kind of, we're laying it out there for people to make their own decisions, and we're not experts. So yeah.
It's I mean, just reading, I'll just quickly read, like, okay, episode 1 is, Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, an introduction. Then we go to flow, metaphor, and the axial revolution. Then we go to Socrates and the quest for wisdom, Plato, and then Aristotle, Kant, then to Buddha and mindfulness and insight and consciousness, the
Well,
Stoic,
that's really
Jesus,
that.
I mean, Neoplatonism, he goes to Descartes, Hobbes, he goes all the way through. Like, it's a lot,
That is really cool. I mean, it appeals to me now. As a younger person, I was looking for this guy all the time. First of all, where do you get all the philosophers kind of laid out in a simple form? Now, somebody is like one of my Jesuit, professors was, deep into Greek, and Greek philosophy, and then, Thomas Aquinas and all of these, Catholic philosophers. But where do you get the person that kind of takes you through the whole thing? And then, oh, by the way, kind of links it up to what's going on with Eastern philosophy and stuff. And, this crossover world that we have now is just cool. You can find this stuff. Amazing.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, let's recommend it to people. What's the guy's name again?
John Vervaeke, University of Toronto professor. And you can find him on YouTube. His newest little video series, I don't want to say little, his newest video series is, I think it's called After Socrates. So he's coming out with something new there. I think he does. Cool. He did like online meditations during COVID. He does a lot of interesting things, but the thing I like about him that I can appreciate, and you can too, is kind of like he found Tai Chi and mindfulness and stuff and yoga. And so did we, plus the kind of the academic intellectual piece. And in that embodiment is a big part of, it's not just studies in academia from a professor. Yeah. It's real embodiment in his life. And
so his 50-part lecture series, which is on YouTube, is called Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. And he says we are suffering from a wisdom famine in the West. And you wrote a book called, Classic Wisdom for Modern Humans. And so we're all talking about the same thing. Cool. Thanks for bringing them up.
Oh, fun fact. I think this is a fact. I think
okay.
Or whatever. He has a tattoo on his body. Know thyself.
Oh, cool. That is fabulous.
Yeah, I sent him a copy of my book. I sent him a copy of my book.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. I've always wondered, like what kind of tattoo. I don't have any. I wouldn't really get one. But the problem for me was like, what would I say? What would I have on there? Like it's permanent. I don't know that I want to do this to my body. But kind of know thyself. I mean, that's getting up there with consideration,
Yeah. Yeah, he talks about this term called dialogos, and he and Jordan Peterson really they talk about it a lot, and
they get into it. Well, cool.
Yeah. Anyways,
right. Kind of like good. Well, this is Pierre from Yoga Heals Everywhere, and Peace Through Grace is my outro.
And Maureen from Landscapes for Learning. Learn to live and live to learn.
Thanks, friends. See you later.